This is a good example of a guardhouse or guard chamber at Cumor's Glen Cairn Church in East Ayrshire. These were built at the entrances to graveyards in the times when the body snatchers or resurrectionists were active. Often they became modified for other uses after the body snatching time had ceased, when it became legal for bodies to be passed to the medical profession for dissection for training students. This is a rather fine example of one of these guard posts at the church at Fenwick in East Ayrshire. The date of 1828 is on it. Previous to an act which made it legal to dissect bodies, only bodies that could be dissected were those of murderers. Murderers who'd murdered in a particularly horrific way, so that their bodies were, as part of the sentence, to be used for dissection. Records show that at one point only about 55 people per year were so sentenced, whilst the ever-expanding medical colleges and universities required anything up to 500 bodies. One of the factors that made it a lucrative trade was that digging up a body and selling it was not a felony, it was a misdemeanor. So you are not likely to be in any way taken to court, tried and executed. In fact, some local authorities near enough ignored it as a requirement that was vital for the medical trade, therefore turned a blind eye. This is another example at Fenwick. It was in the 1820s that Burke and Hare were active. It was often the relatives who would stay and guard the grave. On other occasions people were either paid or it was local volunteers. These are the watchmen's houses at Eaglesham Church in Renfrewshire. These make the point that the wealthier the church was, the more upmarket the premises were for the watchmen. The success of the body snatchers, or as they're called with British humour sometimes, the resurrectionists or resurrection men, is shown that when on occasions graveyards have to be moved, a surprising number of coffins are found to be empty. This is a later example of the sort of fencing put up, mainly in this particular date, this is the 19th century, simply to keep people out. But there were such devices used back in the 18th century for preventing the entry of body snatchers. This would be by the aristocracy or by the wealthy. In some cases, mort slabs were used. Often they were of stone. But this cast iron example at Sturton in East Ayrshire shows the considerable weight, too heavy for one or two people to move. Some churchyards even had lookout towers, the larger ones. The usual way of removing the body was to dig at the head end. Now, with a traditional east-west burial, that would be easily found. And then once the coffin had been reached and the body, it would be a rope put round the shoulders and the body would be extracted, then be infilled, and it would be very hard to tell that the body had been removed at all. The body snatchers be careful not to take any jewellery or anything like that, because that would have made it from a misdemeanour into a felony. Here at Sturton is the memorial to Robert Burns and John Burns. Robert Burns was the uncle of the poet. We know that they both acted as lookouts for body snatchers at this church. Very rarely churchyards would have mort houses where the recently deceased would be placed until such a time as their bodies are no longer any use to the doctors and dissection. There are some amazing stories regarding body snatching. For instance, at Auchenharvie Castle near Torran Yard in Ayrshire, it's said that the bodies were hidden at this remote ruined castle until such time as there were sufficient to make it worthwhile going for a journey up to the universities at Glasgow and Edinburgh and the medical schools. Most body snatching took place between the 18th century and the early 19th. In a few churchyards you still find these structures known as mortsafes, which are usually made from iron bands, either bolted together or in some way welded together, and they were placed on top of the grave. Occasionally they remain in situ, other times they've been treated as curiosities and placed on display within churchyard. These are at Comores Glen Cairn Church in East Ayrshire. It appears to be the remnants of the attaching device for holding on a mort safe. So these metal bars running down to the ground, so a horizontal bar would pass through the top to prevent the grave from being accessed.